All right, everybody, welcome back to Ash's Reality Recaps. This is the Bachelor Episode 9 Fantasy Suites that we're going to recap for you gentlemen so that you understand what the hell happened last night and what your wives will be talking about for the rest of this week, heading into next week. First and foremost, let me just tell you there was not a rose ceremony last night. There was not a rose ceremony, so Joey did not send any of these three ladies home because we got to add some drama to tie into next week, which is the Ladies Tell All. It's basically just a filler week before we actually get to the finale. They'll show some highlights, this, that, whatever. Just know that your wives and girlfriends are probably upset that there was no rose ceremony last night and Joey didn't send one of these ladies home, because I feel like we all already know who's going home out of the final three. So the final three we have here from left to right are Rachel, Daisy, and Kelsey. The way that last night's episode worked is the production has to tie in the upcoming Golden Bachelorette. So if you remember last year we had the Golden Bachelor, which was Gary. He ended up getting married to his lady from his season. Well, these three ladies above me here were brought into this episode to have one-on-one conversations with each one of these ladies. The way that this worked was Susan talked to Rachel, Leslie here in the middle talked to Kelsey on the end, and Sandra talked to Daisy. Now, they were some pretty awkward conversations. Each one of those conversations were across the board. Sandra basically said, buy into the system and give it a go. Leslie basically told Kelsey, I went into mine thinking that I was going to win, and I came out with my heart broken, so be prepared for anything. And Sandra told Daisy, if you can have sex, have sex. So it was kind of awkward in that aspect, but whatever. Again, they got to tie in the Golden Bachelorette as it's coming up as best they can. We're going to assume that one of these three ladies is probably going to be the Golden Bachelorette, but honestly, we don't know. It hasn't been announced yet. But anyhow, let's go ahead and jump into the rest of this episode, and we'll just briefly cover what happened last night again so you know what the hell your women are talking about. So these final couple of episodes will occur at the Dreams Resort and Spa in Mexico. Now, as I've already said, they brought three of the ladies from the Golden Bachelor down to Mexico to have one-on-one conversations. Now, if you dial back to last week when we talked about Maria's hometown and Rachel's hometown, neither one of those individuals actually got to go to their hometown. Joey didn't go to Hawaii for Rachel's hometown, and Joey didn't go back to Canada for Maria's hometown, but yet the production was able to afford for these three ladies from the Golden Bachelor to fly down to Mexico to be part of this episode. Just seems like a pretty big disconnect there. Just wanted to throw that out there because you might hear your ladies talk about that. Like, oh, why are they there if they couldn't go to Hawaii and Canada? Don't know. Have no idea. But apparently that was something that production wanted to do because, again, production needs to tie in the Golden Bachelorette, which is coming up later in the year, so that we're all suckered in and all our wives and women dial in and make sure that we're all watching it. So we'll get into that at the end of the year when that rolls around. But until then, just know that that's the way production rolled it. Let's move on. All right, so the first day was Joey and Rachel. Joey and Rachel went and did some platform diving. Unfortunately, during that platform diving, Rachel jumped off into the water from the third high platform, smashed her jaw. They thought they broke it. They took her to the hospital. After a long day at the hospital, they got to come around for their dinner that night. Truly don't see any connection between these two. Rachel probably should have went home before the fantasy suites, but Joey being Joey went ahead and gave Rachel the envelope. She opened the envelope and gave her the key so they could have their fantasy suites. Again, nobody knows what happens in those fantasy suites. There's no cameras, there's no audio. It's for them to have their own conversations off camera and kind of get to know each other a little bit more on a deeper connection, have sex if they want to have sex, whatever. Just don't see that connection between Joey and Rachel. But he gave her the key, they went in for their night, and then basically she was forgotten the entire rest of the episode. So moving on from Rachel at this point forward, she's forgotten. She's probably going to go home at the rose ceremony. So let's move on to the next date. All right, our second date was between Joey and Kelsey. So for Joey and Kelsey's date, prior to their date, Kelsey had her conversation with Leslie. Leslie basically told her, hey, be prepared to not get picked. You better be safe around your feelings and your emotions. Again, it was awkward conversation all around. Well, for their date, Joey took Kelsey out onto the boat. They boated out across the ocean into the bay. Once they got into the bay, they did some scuba diving with the manta rays and the turtles. My wife and I had a pretty good conversation at this point because it was very awkward as they're scuba diving across. The cameramen are obviously swimming underneath of them because you can see the bubbles rising up around them. And they're basically just spending some time with some footage of Kelsey's areas that they probably shouldn't have been filming. But hey, again, this show's getting to the point where they're just trying to sell the sex aspect. So it is what it is. Guys, just understand that that's where the show is going. So I don't know what to tell you. It's unfortunate in my opinion. But hey, apparently some people like watching that kind of stuff. But anyhow, After their date swimming and boating, they went and had their dinner. Again, Joey gave Kelsey the envelope. Kelsey read her letter. She accepted the one-on-one overnight in the fantasy suites with Joey. We don't know what happens in those fantasy suites, but they did show the most out of the 3 dates of them in the morning where they actually made breakfast together, had some really good conversation. Joey grabbed his duffel bag and walked out the door and down the road to get ready for his 3rd and final date with Daisy. Prior to Daisy's fantasy suite, she had her conversation with Sandra. Sandra basically said, hey, put yourself out there and ask Joey when he wants to start practicing for those future kids. Obviously, she's pushing the sex aspect of the fantasy suites because you don't really see a lot of sexual tension between Joey and any of these ladies, which I think Joey's done intentionally, which I appreciate that he's just not gone down that road throughout this entire season. But you can see where Sandra's mindset is. Now, for Daisy and Joey's one-on-one, they went out and did some four-wheeling through the wilderness. They actually looked like they had a good time. Daisy kept saying she wanted to get dirty. Joey did his best to ride through some mud puddles. It didn't look like they got very dirty, but hey, is what it is. Again, for the 3rd time, Joey gave the card to Daisy. Daisy opened that card, read about the fantasy suites, accepted the key, and they went off and had their one-on-one overnight. Once again, for the 3rd time, we have no idea what happens, so don't ask. We don't know what happens during those fantasy suites. It's their time alone. That next morning, Joey wakes up. He heads out the door, back to his room. He's got a tough decision to make at this point on what lady he wants to send home at the rose ceremony. Holy crap, Joey gets back to his room and there's an envelope in his door from Kelsey. Now look, guys, regardless what your ladies say, this happens every freaking season at this point. During the Fantasy Suites episode, somebody melts down, leaves a letter, does something where they have that extra conversation with Joey. Well, we already know throughout this entire season that Joey's issue has been about being left by somebody that he thinks wants him. So that's exactly where his mind goes. Well, let me tell you, this letter's from Kelsey, and Kelsey basically says, I need to talk to you. It's such a freaking setup at this point in time that it's just not even entertaining. But anyhow, production had Kelsey throw this note in Joey's door saying that she needed to have a conversation. Camera panned into Joey in his room, melting down because he thinks one of his ladies is going to leave because that's basically what happens in the past. And that's how the episode ends, with no rose ceremony. Now again, next week is Ladies Tell All, so there will not be an episode next week. They'll show some spoilers for the finale after that, and then we'll get into the finale and find out who Joey's going to choose. That finale's obviously going to start off with a rose ceremony, sending one of these 3 ladies home, which is most likely going to be Rachel, and then Joey's going to have to choose between Daisy and Kelsey. Now, I've seen quite a few spoilers. Some spoilers say that it's Kelsey. Some spoilers say that it's Daisy. So we don't really know what the outcome is going to be at this point because it seems like there are conflicting spoilers out there. So we'll see you next week for Ladies Tell All, and we'll see you the week after that for the finale. Ash's Reality Recaps. Gentlemen, I hope this helps you understand what the hell's going on in this show and keep up with the conversation that your wives, girlfriends, and women are having. Talk to you next week.